Hello, everyone. It's TAV1, Josh here, and this is the first of a series that we're probably going to call TAV on TAV. So I'm joined here by the inimitable TAV5, Neil Roberts. So everyone at home, give him a round of applause. How are you,
Shall I
Neil?
give myself an applause?
Yes, yeah.
Things I can't hear them.
How are you, Neil? You well?
I'm great, actually. Yeah, TAV on TAV. I like that.
TAV on TAV, yes. So I've got here a selection of questions. It'll be a short form interview, and I've got a selection of questions here that people have asked that they were desperate to hear answered by yourself. So
I can't wait. I'm not sure what the questions are going to be like, whether I can answer them.
No, they're all
my shirt.
Oh, he's got a Durge hoodie. Do you
Is,
find yourself becoming a bit grumpier when you wear it? Sort of really having to fight.
I resist it, you see. So I'm particularly nice when I wear it. Normally I don't have to make the effort.
You wake up and you've got it on and you're like, no, how did this happen? Oh, not a dark urge, Marcus.
It's my children. It was my birthday in September, and they bought me, what do you give an elderly man? You give him dark urge stuff.
Well, at least it wasn't a set of knives.
Or some hankies.
Yes, yeah. So, Looney KS has asked, what would your dream franchise be to work on? And I'm assuming that could be game or film or television, because you are a very, a wonderful television actor as well, aren't you?
Am I supposed to say yes or no at that point? Modestly say, oh, you're right. Yeah. Yes, I'm an excellent, marvelous TV actor. It's you know what? This sounds really pretentious, doesn't it? This Baldur's Gate 3 has been, I'll be honest, I didn't know exactly what it was when I first joined. I'm not familiar with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I obviously know Dungeons and Dragons, know how big that is, but this has really shocked me. How this has exploded. And not just the popularity, the immersiveness, I think, of the people that play it and the fans. Yeah. They absolutely adore it, and it seems to enrich their lives because of the nature of it. And I think there's an awful lot of games, or TV programs or films that just don't do that. You watch it, you're a part of it, you play it. But to actually be emotionally involved in something is quite unusual. And I think as an actor, you probably, I don't know, you may agree, you may not. But I think that being a part of something that is genuinely emotionally connects with an audience is what I find really exciting as an actor anyway, whether it be on stage or whatever. So this has, to be frank, come out of the blue, because I think when you record these things just on your own in a studio with a few of the technical people in the crew, the actors rarely get together.
Yeah, very rarely.
I had no idea, to a certain extent, of what I was a part of. And the last few months have been really thrilling that everyone collectively, all of us, have come together. And I think that's really exciting. And it's quite bizarre from an actor's point of view. Normally you're on the stage, you've been rehearsing for weeks all together. You're then on stage together, sort of looking after each other. And the same with TV and film, you're in it all. And games are quite odd in that respect, that you are all sort of creatively a part of it, but to a certain extent all singular and away from each other. So the last couple of months have been a real joy. Apart from that, I don't know, there's lots of big franchises, aren't there? I actually always, when I was little, I wanted to be James Bond. So I want to be the James Bond franchise.
I could see that.
I'm a little bit past it now. Maybe the baddie.
No, we could do like a sort of, the James Bond, sort of the salt and pepper era.
So post James Bond, with his
life
Zimmer
after
friend.
MI6. I think that'd be quite nice. Sophie Katz has asked, do you have a favorite Durge line?
I've been thinking about this because obviously I've been recording since September 2019.
Yeah.
So one has done a huge amount of dialogue over that period, and I can't remember a lot of it. And again, when you do a TV program or a film, you can watch it if you choose to.
Yeah.
You can fast forward the bits that you're not in and just watch yourself.
Yeah.
But the trouble with this game is I have to play it to hear myself.
Yes, yeah.
I'm useless. So I haven't heard, really, apart from the monologue at the start and a couple of lines afterwards, I have heard nothing of my dialogue. So it's an impossible question to answer because I've forgotten everything. So all that comes to mind at the moment is part of the monologue saying kill, kill, kill again, I think it is.
Nice.
So I'm not sure if that's my favorite. It's the only one I can remember.
I do have that. I've been playing the game and there are lines that I go, don't remember recording that. I've no memory of any of this.
In fairness, someone sent me something on YouTube. And I listened to it and I thought, I don't remember recording that. And then I realized it wasn't my voice.
Deary me. Yes. Yeah, there was someone said, I loved your work. There's another character that someone thinks I sound like. And they said, I didn't realize you played that character. And I was sort of thinking, neither did I.
I didn't.
Yeah. So Cheesecake has asked, Durge has such an amazing voice. How do you manage to keep a tone that holds so much emotion?
Oh, but I'm really flattered and honored. What a wonderful thing to say. Goodness. I'm absolutely stuck for an answer there. Wow. Actually, I'm stuck for an answer because I'm so flattered by what they've said. Because God, Josh, help me out. What do you think? What do you think the answer? What's your answer about keeping something?
Well, I don't have the Durge battle as much as you do. I did a little bit of Durge, but I'm not the Durge.
Well, another thing about games I think can be quite hard is because you say a lot of these lines in isolation.
Yes, yeah.
And each time, and then you do a few hours in the studio, and then a couple of weeks later you do a few more hours. And I must admit, I think that continuity is one of the hardest things.
It is, yeah.
And at the start of every session, they replay my character that I've done before. I don't know if they did that for you.
Yeah.
But it's really important for me to remind myself not just about what your voice sounded like, but about actually getting inside that emotion.
Yeah.
But I did find with the Durge that one thing I tried to focus on, and certainly in that monologue and maybe other bits as well, was to make it accessible. I wanted to make it human. They're all human emotions. And although the Durge sort of goes quite extreme, I think that we always, as humans, fight the urge to a certain extent. We have that conscience on our shoulder of right and wrong. And as I said, not going as far as the Durge does, but actually I think that's what humanizes it. And certainly that's one thing I try to focus all the time of trying to make it accessible, make it human feelings and emotions. The other thing, as we well know, anything with a darkness and a badness, they don't necessarily feel that they are at that dark and that bad.
No.
So I think it's another thing that you think about and you focus on. But I think an awful lot of the Durge is around fighting the confusion within that head. Yeah. And I think I probably do that on a daily basis, my confusion. So it came naturally.
Everyone's like, lovely acting, Neil. And you're like, what?
It is. It was just me.
Oh, so Zim wants to know, did you take any inspiration from any pop culture figures for Durge?
That's really interesting. One thing about our characters, about the Tavs and the Durge, they are all customizable.
Yes.
And so I think a tricky thing that we had to be conscious of was people would choose a voice, but it could look like
in their head. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think all I ever did was try and give some, as I said, some honesty and something that I thought would work within that environment. So every time we did a line in a scenario, I wanted to know exactly where we were, how we felt about the various characters around it. And normally, if you're in a TV or a film, you have that all around you. It's much easier to immerse yourself. In this, you have this blank room and you've just got these lines. So you are literally just using your imagination. So I must admit, I didn't think about that at all. What I tried to do was to play the scene ultimately, to just think about where I was within that scenario with those characters and talk to them and play that environment. And I think that's probably what we do as actors in anything that we do. I think the trouble, or the difficulty with a game is that you have nothing except your imagination.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's quite freeing and that's exciting because you are not limited at all by that. I used to do lots of radio. I've done about 100 radio plays for the BBC. And what I found with that was very similarly that you go with your gut instinct as an actor. When you rehearse a play, you spend 3, 4, 5 weeks rehearsing, and you go from A to Z during that rehearsal period, realizing that A was the right way in the first place. However, because you've gone through everything, you're confident that A was the right place. When I used to do radio plays, there was no time to do any of that. And so you would have to follow your instincts as an actor. And I think similarly with this, that you had to follow your instincts because you were visualizing it yourself and trying to work out exactly where you were in this, some people, this 500-hour story.
Yeah.
There you go. What did you do, Josh? I'm curious.
I don't know. I think I did were you given a bio? Because I think I was told princely. He was princely, slightly arrogant, and just sort of from Baldur's Gate, or lived just outside Baldur's Gate. And then, but I was sort of quite cautious about, I think the only thing for me really was just trying to stray not into cliche of being like, when they say he's a prince from a fantasy thing, it was just trying to avoid any kind of those sort of, onward sort of cliches. And then I think he just became more sarcastic as the game went on. By the end, it was very sarcastic. So I think he probably just became more like me, I think.
Yes, I've noticed your sarcasticness.
What? How dare you?
That's really interesting. I think when you're in those sorts of things, that invariably, because because you're not in a suit, you're not on the actual landscape, I think we fall back an awful lot on our own selves.
Yes,
it's a bit like improv, and I wonder if that's why, because I think I did a similar thing, where there's an aloof vulnerability is probably my place. I try and hide my anxiety and fear behind some sort of bravado and confidence, but it often comes out, which is to a certain extent exactly what the dirge is, really, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's interesting because people have their TAV numbers. We have our TAV numbers. But when we were recording, I was always told, and when we started, there was a sort of essence to what we delivered. So mine was rogue.
Yes.
So TAV 5 is a rogue one.
Yes.
The sort of stealthy, the slightly, as I said, maybe that's slightly aloof. And it's interesting because I thought there was a sarcasticness in mine. Maybe we're all the same.
Maybe everyone. I think we get the tadpole and suddenly we're like, well, great. I think mine was human warrior. I think that was mine, was the sort of human warrior. Because
I must admit, I wonder whether when people are choosing, I know that they just choose a few lines of, or they hear a few lines of the tabs and then they choose the voice. Now, from my understanding, as I said, I haven't got far enough in the game to do it, but you can now change the voice during it if you think that actually there's something that is more appropriate. Now you've listened to a few more lines. I know you couldn't do that at first. You're sort of stuck with whoever it was, but you can now change. But I'm curious as to whether the audience listening to our voices can put those things like, oh yeah, TAV 5 is rogue.
Yes.
And yours is, what did you say it was?
Human warrior or a warrior.
Human warrior. Because I was introduced, I've forgotten who it was though, it may have been TAV 6. I was introduced by one of the directors saying, oh, this is the the female version of Rogue. So we had a little chat about Rogue, indeed.
No way. How interesting. How interesting. Gosh, it's funny. I tell you what's funny for me is before I sort of started doing all this kind of stuff, was seeing how many people's sort of what species people tend to hear my voice and go, I think he looks like that, and or what species they think I, or what race they think I am. And it's funny because some of them do look quite similar to me in real life, and sort of people then going, oh, I've actually done, I sort of had a vision for your voice and that's how it's come across. So it is quite funny sometimes how close people have got it on intuition.
That is really bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. It is funny.
I don't know if there is any through line. I would like to know.
Yeah.
Maybe people can let me know what their character looks like with a Tab 5 voice.
Oh, yes, of course. So because you're on TikTok now, aren't you? So...
But then I can see it. I'm really curious. That would be really interesting.
I think there was one... I think I watched one this morning, actually. I'll have to send it over. Let's Geek It Out says...
Is he a James Bond type of character?
Undoubtedly. That's what I remember. Let's Geek It Out says, what got you into voice acting?
Wow. What got me into voice acting? One of my first jobs was the BBC radio rep, where they had a group of actors in the early 90s. I think about 30 or 40 of us that were employed by the BBC, went there on a daily basis, and you would just do radio plays with the creme de la creme of the acting world who were brought in. And sometimes, as a young man, sometimes I had a really lovely role opposite someone who was amazing, Judi Dench, whatever. Or sometimes I would have some tiny role, because sometimes you were given, I would play 60-year-old pirates at the age of 22 or something, very badly. And so actually that's where it started. And I think games is an extension of that, really. But I think that initially I was quite fearful. I could hear every little mouth and every breath. And after a while, I guess like anything, you have to get rid of that back of your, that little sort of person at the back of your head who natters away, and that self-consciousness of, the microphone's there, and and
everyone thinks you sound really weird, and you're going, shut up.
Yeah, all of those things, exactly. And so I think that was an amazing experience, because you would do several plays every week.
Yeah.
And therefore you just got really used to the medium. So I think it's a small transition then to do other voice acting, to do books and games, etc.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I said this in a video. It's quite a funny shift when I'd gone from sort of doing, because I came off doing a play. I did a tour of a murder mystery for a year, which was sort of set in the 1920s, and everything was just had that slight sort of, Dr. Amersham, I served with him in India. Like everything's just slightly heightened. And then I went into doing a video game, and then I was giving it a lot of gesticulating in the booth, and then you listen back and you go, wow, none of that's come across. Actually, sort of, I was doing all this in the booth, and then, it does help. But it's finding sort of taking things that you normally rely on, like expression and gesture, and then compressing that all into just voice is a tough adjustment, I think.
That is really interesting. I find, though, that I do need to physically involve.
100%.
So it gives it a very different energy. And bottom line is it's all play, isn't it?
Yeah.
All acting is. It is like, children have that wonderful playfulness, and they involve themselves, and their little Lego figures, whatever it is, it's real.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you sort of lose that. You get self-conscious, embarrassed. And I always think actors are not childish, they're childlike. Yes. And you keep that playfulness. So when I'm in the booth, I've got my little Lego characters. I am playing in that way, though.
No.
You have to go for it. What I also think, though, that games have developed, I think there was a time when sometimes the voice acting was almost like an add-on.
Yeah.
And not taken as importantly, not written as well, not as immersive, not as real, truthful. And I think games such as the one we've just done in Baldur's Gate has taken it into a different direction. And again, I think that sometimes that's the appeal of a game. That's why you get an emotional involvement in it.
Yeah.
And I think we were all part of that whole process. But I think that but there are some games I've been doing quite a few games recently, and some of them are bolder and brighter and sort of colourful and 2D, and some of them are much more realistic. Some of them are just lots of grunting and shouts, and after 3 hours you've lost your voice, you can't go in for another week. But there's a real variety. But I do love this, the thing that we were doing. I think that game makers are getting more involved in ensuring that the dialogue is a part of the whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important, and I think that ties into what you were saying about how much people connect to Baldur's Gate, is seeing the truth of everything, and connecting with people's traumas and people's relationships and their insecurities and their worries, and I do think that's a huge part of that. Jojo wants to know, any line or dialogue for Tav that you struggled with?
Well, as I said, I can't remember, but one thing I do remember is there were definitely lines, probably more, some of those unusual words.
Oh, yes.
I go a little bit deaf when I'm anxious and I panic. And so someone will say, "You say it like this, Neil." I go, "Oh, right." And I'd repeat. It's a bit like Joey and Friends. And no, this now, and blah, 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 no. And it would take me so long. So we would have 20, 30 takes with lines like that.
Did you have to do that? What was that? Was it Githyanki that was like, Skva? Did you have to there was a couple, I think if...
It rings a bell, but
I was the same. They're going, no, it's more Skva. And I was going, am I not doing that?
There was also, sometimes they would say, "Neil, you're the first person to say this word. We're recording."
No,
so I said, "Oh, great. Can I just say it any way I want then?" And then everyone has to follow me.
No way. Because we had to follow you for the dirge thing where it's Orin and it's the a little hole big enough for the worm. That.
Oh, were you given my line?
Well, we were given it, and they just went, because they time matched it. They time matched the cutscene to you, because I think you were the first to record, and I think I was second. I was beginning of October, and so when we did that, they just went, "Neil's already done it. You've just got to match his time. You can say this bit really quick and this bit really slow, but you've just got to." So they'd play it. We'd listen to how quickly you did it, and then we'd have to do the.
I apologize profusely.
No, it was wonderful, but it was just very daunting. You go, I can't follow that. Jesus.
Hey, I had no idea. You see, because we record in our own sort of worlds when we're in those booths, we don't know half of sort of what other people have gone through.
No.
How funny.
Yeah, it was.
I would have made it trickier if I'd known. Blah, 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 blah. Try and follow that.
It was tough enough as it was, Neil. No, I'm joshing. Nerdy Vent would like to know, how did you get into character for Durge?
Oh, this is so tricky.
Just rode the tube for a bit. That normally gets me pretty riled.
You did the who what?
I said I just ride the tube for a bit. That normally gets me pretty riled.
Oh, dear. I think it's the same as any acting, though. But I played a mass murderer once on TV, and you think, well, how can I get involved in that? And it goes back to what I said before, that person doesn't necessarily think they're being bad. Yeah. If they had that conscience on their shoulder, that they wouldn't do it. They're wired in a different way. Having said that, I think with the Durge, to a certain extent, part of the wiring is the confusion, the lack of memory. And so I didn't purposely, at least, whether right or wrong, I don't know, but I didn't purposely look at the killing and the death of it all. It was more based around that confusion and the uncomfortableness. and not knowing the past. And I think there's an awful lot of us naturally on a daily basis where we get, said before, where we do have that dilemma, where we get confused and we have all of our baggage, our gunny sack, as they say. And because we carry that around with us all the time, it affects how we deal with life on a daily basis because of our past experience. So ultimately, I think that's all acting is. Sometimes with different characters, you need to do a huge amount of research. You're playing someone who's real. Sometimes I think it was Peter O'Toole played the Elephant Man. They said, "What research did you do?" And he said, "Oh, I didn't do any, because I just do the script. I do what I'm given. That's what I'm playing ultimately. Not necessarily the true story or the life of an actual character. I'm playing the script because that is different from the world beyond." So I know everyone has a different approach, but an awful lot of the time, I take sometimes that I just deal with what I have in the scene, in the moment, because ultimately, what more can you do? I think all of that history and the other elements and those hours of all the dialogue that we've already been through and our understanding of the story and where we are within it all, of those hours and hours of sessions, we hold that within us anyway in our sort of gunny sack. And that influences, therefore, what we then do that day.
Yeah. What a lovely answer. What a lovely, lovely answer. Anything else you'd like to add, sort of as we're wrapping up? Is there anything you'd like to add? You're on TikTok now, so I'll tag you, of course, and everyone can go and follow you.
Thank you very much. No, it has been a joy. You are charming and obviously very sarcastic and sardonic and everything. But no,
and you're very camp and confused.
Yeah, quite. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really am enjoying being part of this game and part of the community. And they're extraordinarily supportive. So I appreciate the questions, and even if I have no answers.
No, you've been really wonderful, Neil. Thank you so much for swinging by.
It's good to see you. Take care.
Good to see you. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.